The Democratic brand is toxic right now. We had a high water mark 2 weeks ago, and that was a CNN poll at 29% favorability. It's dropped in the NBC poll down to 27%. It's one thing to make noise, but you also have to make sense. And I think with this podcast and having the opportunity to dialogue with people I disagree with, it's an opportunity to try to find common ground and not take cheap shots. I'm not looking to put a spoke in the wheel of their, or at least a crowbar in the spokes of their wheel to trip them up, to your point. And I think it's important. Democrats, we tend to be a little more judgmental than we should be. This notion of cancel culture, you've been living it. You've been on the receiving end of it for years and years and years. That's real. And Democrats need to own up to that. They've got to mature.
All right, folks, let's dive in. Gavin Newsom, the governor who's always been in the spotlight, just took the political world by storm during his appearance on Bill Maher's show. Yeah, you heard that right. The self-proclaimed champion of Californian progressiveness dared to label his own Democratic Party as toxic. Talk about guts. But wait, there's more.
A lot of people lately talking about this 80-20 issue, and I think you are on the other side of this now, the side with the 80. 80 being 80% of the people in this country. Again, this is the issue of should biologically born men be able to compete in women's sports.
That's tough.
And, I saw the polling here in California. They think you're a traitor for saying this.
Yeah.
When those kind of people call you a traitor, there's a word for that, electable.
I get it. And that's, look, and the other side weaponizes these issues. They dehumanize, they attack, they demean, and they've weaponized this issue extraordinarily well. That said, on the fundamental question, is it fair? And I can give you example after example. Just in my home state, there was someone that won a triple jump by 8 feet.
Right.
All right. It's just, but it's, it's serious. And we had two people in the state champion. This broke my heart. 2 years ago, I'll never forget it. 18 months ago, we had two extraordinary athletes that got into the state finals, trans athletes. Got in the state finals. The backlash was so bad, they didn't even compete. And the other two people that were kicked out weren't able to compete. It was fundamentally unfair. We haven't been able to figure that out. So I express that as a fierce champion of LGBTQ rights.
Yes,
and with a record that I don't have put up with anyone.
You have the cred.
Newsom didn't stop there. He stood firm against the media waves, tackling issues like cancel culture, claiming California isn't a high-tax state. It's stirring quite the uproar. Why? Because he's criticizing the very party he's part of, pointing fingers and raising eyebrows across the board. Oh, and before we unravel more of this political drama, wait a sec. If you enjoy content that challenges the norm and keeps it real, hit that subscribe button. Go on, I'll wait. Done? Welcome aboard. Now, let's jump back in.
Hello, I'm U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon, joined by Parents Defending Education founder and president Nicole Neely. Today, the Department of Education is announcing an unprecedented directed investigation into the Maine Department of Education for alleged violations of the Family Educational Rights Privacy Act, or FERPA. We have heard disturbing reports that dozens of Maine school districts allow for schools to create gender plans that support a student's transgender identity and then hide those plans from parents, claiming they don't fall under education records. That is unacceptable and unlawful, if true. Parents and guardians have the right to access their child's education records to guide and safeguard their child's mental, emotional, and physical well-being, and we will uphold the law.
All right, so let's really dig into what Gavin Newsom said and just kind of take a closer look at these claims he made, particularly about California and his own Democratic Party. Trust me, this is one rabbit hole you don't want to miss. First off, let's chat about his claim that California isn't really a high-tax state. Now, Gavin might have you believe that California's taxes aren't sky-high, but when we really get down to it, the facts tell a whole different story.
Now his podcast is taking reinvention to a new level and just making stuff up whole cloth. Here he is talking about his state's tax system with New York Times author Ezra Klein.
People talk about the high taxes in California. It's just BS. 16 states tax their poorest residents more than we tax our top 1%. 40% of our residents pay lower taxes than in Florida and Texas. 80% of our residents pay slightly above average taxes. So this notion of even being a high tax state is BS.
Well, you can believe Gavin Newsom or your lying eyes. The states he mentioned, California has the highest sales tax. California, number one, 7.25%. Texas, 6.25%. Florida, 6%. Now on to income tax. California has the highest income tax at 13.3%. for individuals earning more than $1 million a year. Neither Texas nor Florida have income tax.
California stands proudly, or maybe not, at the top when it comes to state tax burdens in America. Want an example? Sure, California's income tax, especially for higher earners, is among the highest in the nation, clocking in at a whopping 13.3% for those earning more than $1 million a year. And get this, folks, sales tax isn't a walk in the park either. California boasts one of the highest sales taxes in the country, at 7.25%. Now, compare that to states like Florida and Texas with absolutely zero state income tax. It's no wonder why many high earners think twice about setting shop in the Golden State. Now, moving on to the bold statements by Newsom regarding cancel culture and judgmentalism in the Democratic Party, right? Some say he's being brave, others reckon he's playing with fire. Seriously, tearing into your own political gang? It's like calling out your family at Thanksgiving dinner, awkward and highly controversial. But if we're being honest, Newsom isn't exactly new to controversy. Consider for a moment California's policies on homelessness and education. Under Newsom's leadership, California has witnessed a rise in homelessness that, quite frankly, deserves more attention. While he's tried to push through measures to address these issues, critics say the state hasn't exactly managed to find its footing. In fact, California's homelessness rate is one of the highest in the United States. And education, that's another debatable topic. Despite being home to some fantastic institutions, many public schools beckon for better funding and resources. Now here's a real juicy part. Newsom's take on social policies, especially around gender identity. He mentioned that, maybe it's unfair for biological males to compete in women's sports, reflecting a growing debate that's ruffling feathers nationwide. But here's a question. How come these issues persist under his jurisdiction? Instead of confronting or endorsing specific legislation to tackle these issues, Newsom's words echo louder than his actions. What about the backlash against his comments? Well, it's starting to brew. The Democratic base, known for being quite firm on social issues, is walking on eggshells. Critics within his party aren't exactly throwing support his way. Instead, they're left scratching their heads and wondering, is he with or against us? I mean, seriously, what's the game plan here? Let's not forget another critical aspect of Newsom's rule, his harsh pandemic measures. While some praised his initial response to COVID-19, others say his policies were nothing short of draconian. Shutting down businesses, schools, heck, even playgrounds, has left lasting scars on the state's economy and its residents. Digging deeper into the social policies, you have to wonder about the balance between rights and responsibilities. California's approach to privacy for transitioning students, for instance, raises some important questions about being informed, safeguarding rights, and the role of parents in such significant decisions. It can be a pretty touchy subject, right? And we really need to talk about it together. So where does that leave us? Newsom remains a polarizing figure, walking a tightrope between progressive and moderate politics, while trying to maintain a facade that everything's under control. It's sort of like watching a suspenseful drama unfold where you honestly can't tell which side the protagonist is really on. As we follow this story, it's crucial to remain informed, and to parse through the rhetoric and reality. Newsom's words have, for sure, shaken up the political scene. The question, though, is will his political bravado translate into real policy shift, or is this another political theater stunt? You know, I've shared a lot of stuff today about Gavin Newsom, kind of pulling apart some narratives and examining the facts. But what I'm curious about is your take. How do you feel about Gavin's comments on his own party and his claims about California? Do you think his words hold truth, or are they just noise? Let me know in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going.